idiot or that's an idiot.
Well, brother, it's unfortunate, but it's still true. As the scripture says, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. Many of us don't know who we are. Many of us don't see one another as brother. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad has told us to call each other brother and sister. You know me as Brother Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
I call you Brother Andrew. I call you Brother Darrell because you are my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Your wife is my sister.
Right.
So when you are in need, I am your brother. I am there for you. When your family is in need, that means your child, your respect, with kindness. We would see the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, every time you look at the black man, you're looking at God. Now let that marinate for a minute. Every time you look at the black man, you're looking at God.
You know what?
So,
yeah.
How would you treat God?
Right.
How would you treat God?
Right. You know what? You bring up an interesting point because I shared what happened to you in class today, where we were having discussions about totally something different. And so one of the Latino kids turned to one of the brother kids and said, "Yeah, that's right," and called him the N-word. And what I did is I stopped class and I told them how offensive that was. And I said, well, what if somebody called you, a spick? Or what if somebody called you? So the person told me, he said, well, that's offensive. And I said, well, you don't look at the N-word as offensive? And they said, no. So that goes back to basically what you're talking about with the self-love thing, because you don't know who you are. You don't know what your history is. You don't know where you come from. There's people who died from that word. The last word they've heard before they were hung was UN or anything like that. So when we had that conversation today, it's about love. You don't love yourself, but everybody else do it, but us. You can't, like when I asked them about when you don't call yourself like a spick. No, we don't do that. That's offensive. So why isn't the N word offensive?
We have allowed that to be used, and it's almost like a second language to our younger generation. And they have to be taught where that word came from and how offensive it is to us as a people. Our children have to be taught that. And it's going to take, because you know something? Our children use that word as a part of the English language, not realizing that their great-great-grandmothers were raped being called the N-word.
Right.
Their great-great-grandfathers were being hung from a tree while being called the N-word, while being burnt at the stake, being called at the N-word, having their limbs chopped off, being called the N-word. And they don't know how offensive and hurtful it is. So the fact that they know nothing about Black history, because it's not being taught in school, they know nothing of their own history, whether it's Black, Latino, X, whatever you want to call yourself, they know nothing of it. And that's why it's so important for us, those of us who are working to obtain the knowledge of self, work to help educate our young brothers and our young sisters, so that they know that they don't get caught up in that dilemma where they're using the N-word negatively. It shouldn't be used at all.
It shouldn't be used at all. You've seen the movie and you've seen the reactions to the post. But what's your comments on after you've seen the movie and to the reflection of a lot of people who chimed on your post so much?
This was my second time seeing the film. This time I watched it with a critical eye, just based on whether or not any portion of it could be deemed anti-Semitic. And I think for people to understand whether or not something is Semitic or not, you really need to learn the definition first.
Correct.
And most people have no idea. Basically, it applies to anyone whose origins stem from an Afro-Asiatic beginnings.
Right.
That's all of us. When they trace, and what this video did, it was simply a documentary. It was an academic discussion. It's a critical discussion that people should be having. It traced the lineage and roots of Black people from the northern tip of Africa down to the southern portion, down to the southernmost point, all the way back up past the Horn of Africa on the eastern side of the continent. How is that debatable?
Well,
It's not debatable.
exactly.
How is that anti-Semitic? It's not. It spends more time talking about the roots, the history, the culture, and the lineage of the people from those particular tribes. You can't talk about original people without talking about the Bantu. They're one of the oldest living tribes on the planet. And for anyone that does not know that, I don't know what to tell you. Their native tongue is more Egyptian than the Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
So people need to understand that. So as they broke down all the tribes, it basically broke down the tribes. It talked about their relationship to the Aztecs, the Mayans. It talks about their relationships to the Twa, the Pacific Islander, for the Africans on those particular tribes. Talks about Black tribes of Ireland. When you talk about, St. Patrick chasing the snakes to the edge of the waters, those are African people. Right. So these are the things that the Jewish community, along with everyone else, is challenging us on, because they're saying,
well, they don't want you to know that either, though.
They're saying as long as these people are heavily pigmented with melanin, then, well, we don't want to claim that, because then that means I have to go back and look at my own birthright, look at my own history. They don't want to do that. Right. And the problem with our folks is because we've never been taught our history, and now not just Black Americans. If you take it to the island and you look at their love for the Queen, if you go back to Africa, we have more of them use. We're trying to revert back to coming with more Afrocentric, more Afro-Asiatic names. A lot of them, I mean, folks can be offended, but it is what it is. They use more Christian European names than anybody on the planet. The bleaching cream, the whole nine. So it's not just us that are holding back. It's not about foundational Black Americans. It's about all of us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you tell folks, this dude is interviewing people over on the continent of Africa? How do you argue with those people about their history and who they say they are? Mm. It's impossible. When you talk about the Pygmy woman who says, we came here because we were chased out, my people were Jews, or whatever they call themselves. How do you debate that? And how do you say it's anti-Semitic or it's anti those folks who now habitate Israel? Mm. So for me, if you notice, I'm not making statements, I'm asking questions. Right. And all throughout the documentary, they're asking questions. If I go to the mosque and I hear, the message a couple of times, I'm going to have questions. I grew up in a church. I grew up in a Pentecostal church. My mom was a minister. My grandparents on both sides. One came from the island with the Christian ministry. The other came from the South with it. And one thing they had in common was that you don't question the ministry. You don't question the Bible. You don't question anything, because to question it means you're not of God. Then only the devil asks those questions. No, so when you think about what's happening with Kyrie Irving, when you think about what's happening in Kanye, instead of sparking debate, conversation, and dialogue, basically they demonize these people. Right. And to demonize someone is to say that you are of the devil. So when you look at us calling ourselves trivial names like nigger and all that other stuff, of course we do. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing we're allowed to say. When they got the video that's circulating now with the music industry dude who had the conversation with the music industry folks, who said, well, what happens if they talked about white women? Or what if they talked about date rape? What if they talk about overdose on over-the-counter pills? They don't want to hear that because that impacts white people.
And what's the response though? Or you get into it? I don't mean. What was his response to?
He said,
"You gotta eat."
Let me say this: when he asked the question, he said, "Well, so it's okay for the Black people to talk about killing themselves and criminalization," and they said, "Yeah, because it's marketable."
And what else he say? And I gotta eat. I got a family.
And I got
a family to feed. But he didn't say that when he was talking about demonizing the white folks and coming out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing is, everybody profits off the exploitation of Black folks globally. Right. And I think that's what we should be looking at. And people are more concerned with Kanye's flaws. And Irving, I had somebody on my Facebook page, a couple of them, he's cocky and he's arrogant. Well, damn, I'm cocky and arrogant sometimes. Mm-hmm. I think we all could be. If I'm good at something, if I feel I'm the smartest person in the room, don't shoot me down. That's my first line of defense. That means you're trying to break my spirit. Yeah. You can't do that. So it's okay for our Kyrie Irving to be cocky and arrogant, as long as he's not being malicious. Mm-hmm. And when he shared the link, there was no malicious intent. when he conducted the interview with the sports folks, who they should have been talking about his basketball game. I
Right,
think that night,
right.
him
Correct.
and KD combined for 58 points.
Right.
You know, they didn't talk about his play on the court. They didn't care. They kept trying to pressure him into saying anything, any documentary
So
that you
apologize
see
for
about
that,
black
yeah.
people, you should apologize.
Right.
Right.
Like, why are you learning about you when you should just focus on playing basketball?
You know,
That's an issue. So we should be looking at their response and saying, damn, how come we don't have a collective response? That's the real question.
Well,
Where's our collective response?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. You bring that question up. Our response is always to jump on what they say and to demonize, like you said earlier, like both of y'all said earlier, to demonize them as villains, as to, you know, like you even seen some of the posts. I don't want to keep going back to the post,
It's
but
okay.
you even seen the comments on the post. You know, like you said, he's arrogant. You know, he's a problem child. How are you a problem child when, first of all, he's probably the only one in the NBA with common sense? And I'm not saying that. I'm pretty sure there's more conscious ones because you can tell who speaks and out. But one thing I am learning about this whole conversation is I see where people stand on certain topics. Because if you're jumping on the whole issue to bash Kyrie, then that means there's something within yourself. If you look like me, there's something within yourself that you don't know about yourself, or something that's I don't know, irregular about your thinking. Because just like you said in the documentary, all it is really like an eyewitness account of historically of what the black man is. And if you can't gravitate to
but
that, then
you know
something's wrong
something,
with you.
it's unfortunate that many of us hate ourselves. And that's the reality.
When you talk to hate yourself, what else can you do?
You know?
I think when we look at the nation, I think the biggest pushback in the 50s and 60s at one of the peak periods was the fact that they were bringing to light that we hate ourselves. And who taught you to hate yourself?
Right.
And we don't get into that. The bottom line is, it's like when we're looking at this thing, it's bigger than Kyrie. I don't want to talk about Kanye.
Right.
It's bigger than that.
Right.
They're telling us that we can't watch a documentary that was made for us. What's next? I can't read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I can't read none of the books by Elijah Muhammad. What's next? You know, I can't read black newspapers. I can't read black comics. I can't watch black movies unless it's made by Jewish or Irish or Italian people. You know, and that's what we should be asking ourselves. Well, what is next? Because if this is what they can do to the wealthiest amongst us, and if this is what they can do to the most popular amongst us, then what are they doing to our kids in the educational system?
Well,
What are they doing to us on the jobs? We gotta walk. What happens when you go to work and you work for some corporate entity and they say, "What do you feel? How do you feel about Kyrie in that film?" If you say, "Well, yeah, I strongly support him,"
you get
is
fired.
your job on the line? I had a boss once who told me, you know, at some point you need to make a decision between that black stuff and this job.
Wow.
Well, how do I make a decision like that? It's easy. You know, that's why I did Kyrie. I love myself to the point I can't help but love my people.
Mm.
If I have to choose between my people and a job, and the job got to go.
Mm.
I'll find a way to eat. And I think we should be teaching all of our folks, brother, sister, you will find a way to eat.
You know, one thing, Brother Darrell, and I know you can bear witness because you're in the school system, Brother Andrew, you're in the school system. Black history is not being taught to our children.
Mm-mm.
Now, when I came up, I had a Black history class. I don't know if you all have Black history in your high school.
I have Miss Bud taught us. I have Black history.
I went to school in Meriden, Connecticut. We had annual Klan rallies. What does that tell you about Black history in school?
But you know, I went to school in Passaic, New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a Black history course.
Mhm.
That was part of our curriculum.
Yeah.
And not one school in the city of Springfield here teaches Black history, to my knowledge. Now, correct me if I'm wrong.
Not no more. But when I was in high school, we did have Black history.
Okay. And I think it's important that we as a community bring this up at a school committee meeting and find out why. Why is it that our children are not being taught Black history, their history? Because even if you look at the books today, they talk about Black people in slavery. Well, what about before slavery?
Well, let me say this.
What about before slavery?
Let me say this,
Where
brother.
were we before slaves?
So let me say this, Brother Johnny, too. And I want just to have the conversation about if Black history is not enough, because to me, there's no such thing as Black history. It's world history. Because if you look at all these books that came before Columbus and all these authors, they talk about the world and the contributions we made to the world. Because when you do ask for Black history. If we go downtown right now to Springfield and we say we want Black history, all they're gonna do is put in the civil rights movement when we were getting beat and slapped and beat down. I want to say this. So we were getting, because that's all they're showing them kids right now. Because when you ask a kid about Black history, they bring up 3 figures today. They tell you, and they'll talk about segregation and all that. I'm talking about the contributions that we made to this world that they don't even include when you talk about. I don't call it Black history; it's world history.
You don't have it. Here's the deal. The thing I love about that documentary, they talk about the history of the term Kim.
Mm-hmm.
Kim means what? Black.
Black.
India means what? Black. I don't think anybody give a damn about that English, that book of law, that English book of law that everybody refers to.
Right.
We get caught up in that. But when you look at how the people themselves describe
etymology.
I can't say the word. So say the word for me.
The etymology.
Etymology, whatever it is. We get so caught up in that. The bottom line is they're not teaching us about our tribe. They're not teaching us about anybody with heavily melanated skin. What you just did, here's the thing. We get caught up in how we identify if we don't want to deal with the oppression. It doesn't matter how we identify. We identify ourselves differently across the globe. We are not a monolith. So if I'm from, I don't know, Ghana, and I say I'm Yoruba, does it make a difference? I'm still being oppressed. I'm still being taught a colonizer's language. I'm still being treated like I'm third class. So it doesn't matter how we identify. The bottom line is, are we being taught our history and our culture? And I think that we need to.
I'm gonna disagree with you. I'm gonna disagree with you on this.
On what Brother Johnny is saying, not how we identify.
But I'm gonna disagree with you on this.
Go ahead.
Because if you're living in the United States, and the United States is a corporation, you better be aware about how you identify, because legally it does make a difference, and it is a difference.
That whole argument is. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
With that, if I lived in the 1920s and I identified as a Moor.
I'm not telling you, it has nothing to do with more.
I'm giving an example.
It has nothing to do with more.
You have to listen to the question before you can answer it. Right? All right. If that's how I identified, and I didn't see myself as Black, Negro, colored, all that stuff.
Because we're not Black, Negro, or colored.
If it doesn't matter, if I looked at a white woman wrong, would I still be lynched?
Of course.
Would I still have my last word? Still would have been what? N-I-G-G-E-R. Correct. So,
but my point is,
let him finish. Let him finish.
No, I know.
So
let him finish.
I don't want to get. I guess my thing is, we got to be careful about semantics and how it serves as a distraction. Sometimes everything you're saying is critical and important, but more important is focusing on the point that we haven't pushed to create more opportunities to educate us on us. We could talk all day about Black, Negro, colored, Moor, Israelite. It doesn't matter if we're not creating opportunities to give people the information so that they can make educated decisions in terms of how they self-identify. And if we're not doing that, then we're doing ourselves a great disservice. We did the same thing they did back then. I remember we went around door to door in New Haven getting signatures to have ourselves called African Americans. I was one of them dudes knocking on doors. We can go from color to Negro to African American to Moor to Israelite, you name it. We can call ourselves that. But changing our name does not change our condition.
You turned it into a colored thing.
No.
And it's not a colored thing. What I'm trying to tell you is, legally, there's a legal status that you have that is under this corporation. And if you look at the 14th Amendment, and next show we can break that whole 14th Amendment down if you want to get into that.
If I lived in Antigua, would that change for me? I'm no longer I'm not an American citizen. I have dual citizenship.
Well, you're gonna always be. Listen, there's no race of people called Antiguas, are they? There's no race of people, right?
Dude, but let me just say this.
How
does any of that change our current situation?
It doesn't.
Then what are we talking about? Why are we wasting time talking on it?
Okay. But
you can disagree. I'm just asking.
No, but I'm saying legal. But you gotta understand, you can't be on the confines of legally of what this corporation is set up, and then you sit up and complain about how it's set up. So there's other things that we need to be fighting for and talking about than just who you call yourself.
But you asked the question, why do we hate ourselves?
Right.
We can only answer that by saying, it's like saying, why am I malnourished? And someone said, well, you don't eat vegetables. Someone says, well, no, because some of these vegetables aren't natural. Right. The bottom line is, let's talk about why I'm malnourished. I'm dying culturally. I'm dying right now. You want to talk about a cut on my finger. What you're talking about is just a slice of the problem. Well, culturally, as a collective, if the collective of our folks across the globe was an individual, we're losing a battle. We're dying culturally. Our history is being completely wiped out.
Absolutely.
And people want to debate about what we call ourselves and how we identify ourselves. I didn't bring up the damn color.
Who's debating about that?
I brought up the fact
Because we're not debating about that.
I brought up the thing about self-identification.
Right.
The only way we can determine who we are is if we educate ourselves.
Right.
If we don't talk about educating ourselves in the school system, whether it's a human problem, a black problem, a moral problem, or whatever we choose, the American legal system don't give a damn.
The point is
We have to make sure we nourish ourselves. We can only do that through education.
Well, the last thing too is
We have to educate.
well, the last point to this before, but and you can answer this too is so okay. We do get Black history in the school system. We still in a system,
But still,
why can't we create these systems for ourselves like we should be doing?
Because of you, I'm sorry, Brother Johnny. Go ahead.
no, you know, education is important. You know, it's important that we start our own schools, have our own schools, be taught by our own people.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's important for us
Right.
for you, when your child comes out of that system, you know, the public school system, that you bring your child home and you debrief them as to what's going on, and that makes sure that if they're being taught Christopher Columbus discovered America, you tell them, no son, no daughter, that's not true. That's not true. And then enlighten them on the truth. We should have community centers set up. So we have school in the afternoon. After the school closes, the community center opens up where we have a history class being taught in our communities. We should have a Saturday school, okay? We're blessed in our nation to have universities of Islam where our children are being taught the knowledge of self, the knowledge of God, and the knowledge of the enemy of God, which is Satan. See, you can't go into the public school system and say, the black man is the Asiatic black man and make it on the cream planet of God of the universe. Or you'd be held accountable, and next thing you know, you go into the administration and they're saying, well, where's all this coming from? Where's that in our system?
Our curriculum.
Our curriculum.
Right.
Okay? It's not your curriculum, it's our curriculum. Well, you don't teach your curriculum in our school. That's why we have to have our own schools. That's why we have to come together and pool our resources together so that we can have something for ourselves, so that we can continue to educate our children and our adults. Families. It's important. And then we wouldn't be at this crossroads where we have our brothers being persecuted for speaking truth. And that's the whole key. Speaking truth. We're being held hostage for speaking truth. There's nothing that Kyrie said that is not true.
Right.
It's what he did. He's not being held accountable for speaking truth. He's being held accountable for sharing information.
But you have to understand something. When you look at,
I'm not agreeing. I'm just laughing about it.
When you look at the media, who's over the media? When you look at the music industry, who's over the music industry?
Right.
When you look at all these different entities, who's at the top?
Same group.
The same group. The same group. And then when you try to pull out and try to start your own, you're always being persecuted.
Yep.
No, it's like you're on a plantation. Let's look at the sporting industry. When you have the draft, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, they bring you into a camp.
Like an auction. Yeah.
Like an auction block.
Mm-hmm.
Jump.
Combines, right?
Yeah. Run.
Slave combine. See how
Jump.
Bend over, boy.
How far?
Open your mouth, boy.
Come on.
Show your teeth.
Same thing.
True.
What is the difference?
It's no different.
Of a combine and a slave auction?
Listen.
And then they bid on the best slave.
Hold on, and the best slave on the plantation gets to live in the big house, get to wear master's clothes.
Get the marry master's daughter.
What?
Marry master's daughter.
So what's the difference? You get compensated for selling your soul for $1.
But it's true. But even better yet, your agent, who is most of them are Jews, tell you need to go there to see what your worth is. So it is true. It is true. But why don't we have our own leagues? Man, see, you take a person like Shaq. Shaq is getting close to $1 billion. You bring him into the mix, whoever his agent is. Shaq tells his agent or his agents before they go on the show, because my cousin who actually works in the studio with them saying that they had the conversation before they even went on the air. They go on the air, they know what they're talking about. The agent is telling you to talk about. talking about that. They're telling you to generate conversations about that when they didn't have. They're there to talk about basketball. They're there not to talk about Kyrie. So then they spin it and turn it and say, well, we're talking about Kyrie, this idiot. We should be talking about basketball. You should be talking about basketball.
See, you know, excuse me, Brother Dow. They're going to say and talk against because their money is coming from the same establishment.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
Okay. And they're afraid to go against the establishment.
Because they'll be in the same boat as
they'll be in the same boat. They're being, and they don't want to lose what they have, so they're going to come against their own brother or their own sister or their own people in order to keep the slave master happy.
We talked about the plantation system, right? We use the analogy of a slave plantation, right? And then we double back and say, well, why the slaves acted like slaves? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We've already answered the question. I'd rather talk to when I talk to the young cats where I teach or at that school, I'm talking about Kyrie and why Kyrie is standing his ground and why he wouldn't budge. That's because of the information that he's taking in, because of how hard he studied. I can't sit here and talk about these coons who want to remain on the plantation. Yeah. And trying to understand how these people think means I have to dumb myself all the way back down.
Right.
Shaq, Barkley, half them idiots that were on Facebook arguing back and forth talking about Kyrie, he's an idiot, Kyrie. I mean, it's like, you're mad because this brother stood up for himself in situations where most people will not.
Right.
Let's talk about the brother who stood up for himself. Let's be proud of that. And let's talk about what would happen. How do we create more Kyries so that Kyrie won't stand alone next time? We got people here on the local level that won't stand up for themselves.
Right.
So ours is a problem of leadership. People are looking for that leadership, someone to come along and say everybody should be Kyrie. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a mass press conference. We need 5,000 people to show up because we're going to let people know, at least in this city, we stand behind Kyrie. Name one city where that happened.
Right. It didn't happen.
Name one city where everybody from every mosque and every black church, every Jehovah Witness hall, wherever they have, every temple, show me where they all came together and said, we're going to stand behind this brother.
You know,
so we really need to focus on what we need to do to strengthen ourselves as a community. We can talk about our flaws all day long because we're damn good at that.
So back to what you're saying, like the responses. So those like the collective responses that we should have. Like what?
I'm not saying what should and shouldn't be. I asked the question. What I'm saying is, it's basically it's part of the same question. What should our collective response be? How should we have responded? Do we spend more time talking about the cookies that are falling apart, or do we talk about the cookies that are perfect?
You just gave a
no. I know. I just gave it. I'm just saying that's one strategy. We should have a plethora of strategies. Instead of talking, even when Brother Johnny says, why don't we take it to the school department? In my head, I'm thinking at the same time, instead of like you said, well, let's not talk about black because we're human. In my head, I'm like, well,
I said, let's not talk about black history, let's talk about world history.
Okay.
That's what I said.
But tomato.
Right.
My thing is, I'm thinking when he said the school department, I'm like, well, we're still going back to the great grandkids of my great grandfather's slave master. And saying, why don't you teach us? Well, they're not going to teach us for the same reason that the great-grandfather didn't teach us.
Right.
We should take every empty room. When I first came to Springfield, we were teaching teaching Black history out of Tim Jackson's house on Dawes Street in his small living room, and we had about 20 kids up in there. We should start utilizing every free space we have. We should be showing that film along with Hidden Colors and any academically proven sound document that we have. We should be utilizing as a teaching source. This whole Kyrie Kanye thing, this who was Nick Cannon before him, should be a teachable lesson for us. And if this isn't going to be the central thesis of every sermon and every religious spiritual institution that we have moving forward, then we got a problem. Because what they're actually doing is not just about breaking down the human spirit. Man, they're trying to pick apart our spirituality. And right now in this country and across the globe, all we have left is our sense of spirituality. And that's the thing that has pulled us through every hard, challenging aspect of the Black sojourn.
Right.
Our spirituality. I don't care what your belief system is. It's the spirituality. When someone tells you, don't learn the history of why your spiritual fortitude is the way it is, and that's wrong, and for you to do that means you're anti-us, we should be looking at it. We should be analyzing their response and saying, well, why? What's the hidden agenda? They're killing our sense of spirituality. They've broken down the family. We talk about we should do this for kids. Well, what about the rest of the family? We should do it for kids. We should do it for the adults, for the adults. No, we should be doing it for our families. Our families are what give us that spiritual strength. Every time I look at my kids, I walk out of there, I see my sense of connection. There's a direct sense of connection.
Mm-hmm.
That's spiritual, man. And it's like the minute they start having us rethinking how we see ourselves spiritually, collectively, we're done.
Right.
Well, Brother Darrell, and you're absolutely right. And the thing about it, we're so divided as a community, as a people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we have to do, is come together. The Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan teaches us that our unity will solve 95% of our problems. But we have never tried uniting.
Mm-hmm.
We've never tried uniting, brother. We stay divided religion. We stay divided where we come from. We stay divided by so many different entities. You're Alpha, I'm an Iota. You're Phi Beta Sigma, I'm a Kappa. You're Christian, I'm a Muslim. You from Connecticut, I'm from New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
You light skin, I'm dark skin. There's so many things that's keeping us divided. And what we need to do is come together on the fact that we're brothers and sisters, and that we're under we're suffering people under this system.
When William Monroe Trotter, back in 1904, 1905, gathered all the Black thinkers from across the country and in Canada, brought them across the border to Canada, and formed the Niagara movement.
Mm.
We had unity. Folks were looking for a collective response. They had the scholars, they had the philosophers, they had the Black artists of the day. They were there. It was 42 members there. They were convening a Black Congress with the Niagara movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who disrupted that? When you say we haven't, no, we there's been numerous attempts. At every juncture, who jumps in? They formed the Niagara movement. 2 years later, WB and what group collaborated to disrupt the progress of the Niagara movement and create the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People?
Yeah.
Who did he pull his resources with?
Right. The Jewish.
He extracted all the critical members of the Niagara movement and brought it over to the other community to form the NAACP.
Yeah.
So we were moving forward. Marcus Garvey, he had one of the largest organizations historically.
Mm.
The UNIA was huge.
Right.
It was so powerful. Someone said the other day, it was so powerful that they coined a term after his name, Garveyite, Garvey movement. Millions across the globe, when they didn't have no social media, there was no television, there was no radio, we had access to nothing. Why were people buying into it and moving into the same direction? Then ask yourself, who was at the forefront of disrupting the Garvey movement? Even the Klan members were helping, that were agreeing with him, giving them funds to strengthen this movement. Mm-hmm. But there was a group that wasn't. I think we talked about it before the Mayflower. Mm-hmm. When you talk about this, fast forward up to the 1960s, when folks were organizing across the country, that March on Washington. Who formed the March on Washington? Who started that drive? Did anybody know?
Well, I know it was Malcolm X who started it, but
Malcolm
X pulled out of it when he found out that they invited all his.
He commented on it. He commented on it. Who started it? Does anybody know?
I'm just going by.
Well, that march was led by Martin Luther King Jr.
No, Martin Luther King was part of the Big Five. John F. Kennedy and other groups, they worked together to put them at the helm of that movement. That movement was community driven. Mm-hmm. There was small grassroots organizations across the country, again, working together, decided they were going to have a march on Washington. They spread word via every church, every neighborhood, the barbershops. Mm-hmm. They talked about, we're going to march on Washington. It started out as a secret. It was a secret movement. They were going to march on Washington. Once it got to the point where it grew beyond FBI, CIA control, what they did? That's when Malcolm really commented, they selected the Big Five and put them at the forefront. It was them young brothers, John Lewis and them, who were going around I think they were Core. They were doing, that was grassroots, man.
I know he had made a comment that he had initiated it, and when he found out who was involved in it, he backed out. So we're saying the same thing. Malcolm X said that.
Malcolm didn't organize it. You got to know your history. And I'm not saying to you, I'm saying it to the people out there who are listening. You got to know your history. So when people say, like, when folks
that's documented in a book, so maybe the dude did it, maybe he did it wrong. Maybe the book was wrong.
The book was wrong. It was a grassroots movement. Mm-hmm. And when he commented, he said they turned around and they took the Big Five and put them at the head of that movement.
Okay,
And he
so
was
I didn't hear that part, but there's another part in there. I'm not gonna go into the tab. I'll show you what I said.
You can show me. I've read it too. But I'm telling you, learn the history of that movement, and then learn the history of who led the move to disrupt that movement. So we got to do our history. When we look at this Kyrie Irving thing, this is nothing new.
Mhm.
Our response is still the same. Every time they come through and they disrupt the process. We'll spend more time arguing, debating over trivial things, and never really looking at that piece that's killing us from the inside.
You know, and until we decide to sit down as brothers and sisters, close the door, check your titles at the door.
Yep.
Check your titles at the door and sit down, and don't have cameras inviting the media. Look what I've done. I've gotten the community together. No, we need to sit down and talk about what's going on in our community.
Right.
And then set an agenda and work on that agenda to improve the condition of our people and our community. And it can be done. It's that it never has been done. But if we sit down and move forward, and then let me tell you something, everybody's not going to be invited to that table.
Well, no, you can't invite.
Because you know something? We have those that are going to go back to the enemy and say, you know, Brother Darrell is having a meeting.
Absolutely.
You know, Brother Johnny's involved with that. You know, Andrew's at the table, and this one is at the table, and that one's at the table. So that they can stop what we're doing. But we can't allow anything to stop the progress of our people.
It's life or death.
We got to stop it.
Right.
And we have to pass the torch on to the younger brothers and sisters to keep it going. But the problem is, when you look at the leadership in our community, and that's a very poor term to use, it has not been passed on to the younger people.
People have to take their knowledge, information right to the grave.
To the grave.
To the grave.
We don't have young people among us that can take that baton and take us further. We still have people 65 and 75 running for these seats. No, sit your butt down.
Give up these seats too. I mean, that's an issue. It's an issue.
No, we need new thinkers. But understand something. We have to have an agenda. And then if you don't meet that agenda, then you need to be removed from that seat. Simple as that. But what we have to do is first come together, brothers and sisters. We have to first come together. And I know that's difficult, but we have to try to come together. Unity is key. In community, you have the word unity. In the word community, you have the word unity.
What does that unity look like? When you say we have, like people always say we have to come together. So what exactly does that look like? Because there are small groups that do work together. So
Yes.
So when we got people who are listening to the show right now, they're saying, but I do work with other Black people. And I feel like I am united. What maybe they're getting it wrong. What does that unity look like exactly? And for anybody, I'm not sure if we're on 90.7 because they've been dealing with technical difficulties for last week. Some of these boxes aren't working, but we are live on Facebook. So we can continue the conversation unless you guys have meetings. Well, I'm gonna turn off the box because that's one of them. All right.
Well, you know something, Brother Dow?
Yep.
All these different organizations, say if there's 5 different organizations, and we have different organizations that are doing wonderful things.
Right.
They're doing wonderful things in the community. But what we need is for all those 5 organizations to come together, to sit down. If there's 5 organizations working, doing different things in our community, doing great work, what about all 5 of those organizations coming together, okay, and sitting down and sharing ideas, coming together and talking about what needs to be done in our community, okay? But listen, it's not about my idea is better than yours. What about just taking it and setting up agenda with all 5 organizations and say, listen, yeah, well, we can do that. We can do that. We can do that. It's not about putting one another's ideas down, because we have brilliant people in our community. But the key is coming together. Coming together. That's the key. That's unity, coming together.
But is everybody in, this is a question for both of y'all, is everybody invited at the table?
Absolutely.
Because I
Get out of my head, man.
No,
I'm not. No, because I've had people sit down and tell me, and they know who they are. I don't know if they listen, sit down and tell me that when you on the radio with Brother Johnny, you guys talk too much. And you on the radio with Daryl, man, you guys are very opinionated. Why don't you calm it down? I've had people told us that. So, but is that going to affect?
But somebody talking to you about our talk show and tell us that we talk too much on our talk show.
Yeah.
Did you say talk?
Did you say talk show?
You said talk.
We talk too much on our talk show.
Yeah.
So we should just, my man said way back in 70, Africa's burning and the black man doing the freak. So let's talk. Let's get some music and some booty shaking, some drill music. Talk about shooting ourselves and.
But John, but Brother Johnny,
I don't mean to be sarcastic.
We talk too much on our talk show.
But you've got that, and I know Brother Daryl has got that. But my thing is just like you saying, we want to all come together as on one accord. But not everybody is not on one accord because there's people that might like. I'm not saying for you. There's people that might not like me for reasons that I have no clue of why you don't like me because I don't bother nobody. I mean, do I get on here and run my mouth a lot? Sometimes, yeah, I do get up here and run my mouth. But anytime there's a call to action or somebody asks me to do something, or any one of you two say, hey, I need you to do this. Am I there? I'm always there, or I try to be there. Okay. From the most part. I'm not saying I'm there 100% all the time, but I try to be. But people might not like me just for the simple fact, or say, I might be affiliated with Daryl. I don't like Keaton because he believed in what Daryl, didn't even have a conversation with Daryl. I had people come up to me and say, hey, I don't like your boy. And don't even know Daryl.
Never met me.
Or somebody will come up and say, yo, man, what's up with Brother Johnny? Yo, you don't know, sit down with these people. Like you said, bro, I think you said, Brother Johnny, a couple of weeks ago, if you got a difference with me, just sit down and come and talk to me. We don't even talk. You black people don't even talk to each other.
Could I respond to that?
Yeah. That was a question.
I think the same thing I said earlier, collectively, the black community, or whatever we choose to call ourselves, if we were one collective body, we're a body in need of healing. If I know I'm starving to death, I'm going to find food. So what I'm saying when he says, we need to come together and we have to build, it's not a question of who likes me and who don't, because I know I'm disliked. I'm okay with that. Because if everybody like me, then that means I'm not doing my job.
Right.
I'm cool with that. If we ain't talking, then there's silence in the room. So the more we talk, the better. The bottom line is some things have to get said, and I think we have to build anyways. My issue with the organizations is some of these organizations are so mainstream. These folks are so concerned with appealing to and appeasing the power structure that they've been rendered useless years ago. So I think the real power, as Fred Hampton would say, the real power is in the hands of the people. And I think organizing and uniting means bringing these households, bringing these families together, and understanding that there's commonality. They have a common enemy, and we all need to eat. Let's build a common garden. I think we need to build off of our strengths and our capacities, not our flaws and our liabilities. We spend more time talking about our flaws, our liabilities, our fragmentation, but we never focus on our capacities. That's the reason why we're still here. Abraham Lincoln, after signing the Emancipation Proclamation, said, I wouldn't worry about the Negro race. 100 years from now, they'll never make it on their own. We pull back our supports, though they will not be here. Read it. They will not be here in 100 years. Yeah. But we did, because in extreme situations, I give my community credit. We pull together. We don't give ourselves credit for it because we never talk about our strengths. We spend more time talking about what we don't do right, that we fail to focus on the 75% of the things that inspired us to be here.
So let me I just want to say this, Brother Dow, and you're right. But when we come to the table, we have those who come to the meeting and they want to spew their venom. And we allow that. And what that does is interrupt us moving forward to getting to the point where we need to get to. Yep. Because we lose our focus, and now we're focused on this person spewing their venom about this one, about that one, and they take us completely off our agenda, which is moving forward.
Why do we keep inviting that person? Right. Because they're affiliated with certain.
That's because we don't have a watchman at the door,
and they're affiliated with certain organizations.
But you're right. But listen, remember that time when you was talking, you said you didn't like me and care nothing for me, and then I went and called you and I sat down with you.
With me?
Yeah.
You and me?
Yeah.
No. Oh yeah. Okay.
No, I was.
I'm like, wait a minute.
Anyway,
my bad, man.
Anyway, you messed that all up.
Oh, that's blaming on my age.
I said that because I mean, at some point, you just messed that all up.
I did.
You're supposed to come in. No, but Brother Johnny is right. We keep inviting the same people, and then at the end of the day, nothing really gets done in the meeting. Then we back to the same old thing. Nobody wants to come here. Nobody wants to come, and it's the same old, same old. I think at this time, we know what needs to be done, and there's people that's organizing, and I think it's really not everybody is going to be on board with the plan. That don't mean you can work together.
Right.
People just need to find out where they fit in and how they fit in and how they can help us moving forward. That's what it at the end of the day is about.
I think that's where it comes down to leadership. Real leadership. I mean, a real general can look at an army and tell who the sharpshooters are, who are the hand-to-hand combat guys, who are the strategists, who are the IT guys, and they know how to effectively utilize people. So it's not about how many people we got in the room. It's not about making sure we have the who's who and the prominent personalities and legacy families in the room. I'd rather walk around with 10 knuckleheads. One of them is brilliant. One of them can throw hands like God knows what. Another one asks all the right questions. I'd rather walk around with them. So sometimes we get caught up in this term leadership. My thing is I look at leadership and I'm like, dang, if none of y'all can draw 10 people to a room when you said we're having a meeting, you can't get more than 10 people in the room, then you're not leadership. If you can't say community, let me educate you on this, this, and this, and have the community respond in unison, you're not leadership.
Right.
We have this tendency to look at leadership, people who have the highest paying jobs, the folks whose families are able to help them to go to, who can afford to send them off to college, or the dope athletes who can jump through the roof or run through a whole line without being touched. We look at them as leadership. And real leadership, those are the impact players. Those are the folks on the streets. And I'm like, hey, Drew, we need 50 people in this room. We having something on the front steps of such and such. Can you help me get 75 bodies on the front steps? And they do it and they deliver. That's leadership because that tells me that the people respect them. That tells me that the people are influenced by them. Right. I don't care what you could be that D9, you could be NAACP, Urban League, and still can't get 5 people in the room. The question is, do you have a relationship with the people? So we have to find the people that have relationships with our family members, with our friends, with the dudes you see at the local barbershop. Who are the folks that they listen to? And those are the people that need to be in the room. You can't, parlay with a bunch of snakes that accept something different. They're all going to bite you. Right. And most of these mainstream, middle of the road Negroes, and I know people thought for years I was one of them because of what I worked. But A, we can't judge a book by the cover. B, we need to look at the body of work that people bring to the table. C, do you really influence anybody outside of Facebook and Instagram?
Well,
I know I talked too much. I'm sorry.
No, Brother Darryl, it's always a pleasure, brother. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Respect for Life show. Brother Andrew, Brother Johnny, Brother Darryl.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I hate to cut this short because I know we're not even on 90.7 any longer, but we're on Facebook Live. But we want to thank you all for tuning in, and we ask that you continue to listen to the Respect for Life show every Wednesday at 12 o'clock p.m. on 90.7 on the FM dial. Also, we ask that you listen to Brother Darryl. Your show is on
every Monday night at 9 p.m.
9 p.m. right here, 90.7 on your FM dial, WTCC, and live. You go live every Monday, correct?
Every Monday.
Praise be to Allah. So with that being said, we want to thank everyone for tuning in. May God continue to bless you, bless us, protect us as we live in this most difficult time. Stay prayed up, brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum.
Let me share that from you had on your page. Yes, on the page.
Well, I had some problem in the beginning because I was trying to see what we need to do to make sure, because I wasn't hearing us on the radio anymore.
So you heard us though after though, right?
And I heard it's on live, so they still didn't fix that problem.
Oh, right.
You have to have that slider, that main control box that Jim has.
So was it live?
Not on the radio, but we were live online, so we could take the same show and broadcast it.
Right. We can send it
And
to
there's about 15 comments. I couldn't even see them.
Ooh, shit, what was that?
Okay, let's see. share